What experience of yours is so crazy? You don't tell people about it. Because they wouldn't believe you? I was like 12 years old and played with my dog in the backyard. He suddenly stopped and just looked at my leg. There was a piece of wood in my leg. It was ~BCM long and in 90 degrees angle in my leg. It didn't hurt. I didn't feel anything. To this day I'm wondering how this stick found its way into my leg. One day, completely out of the blue, my daughter, 8, started telling me she wanted to look out the window to see shooting stars. I told her it's very rare to see any shooting stars where we live. Yonkers, NY. She was really adamant that we should look and try to see one anyway. So I walk with her over to our living room window and look out with her. I swear not 10 seconds had passed before a meteor went streaking by. Looser than any I had ever seen. You could see the trail it left in the sky and it glowed bright red. She got so excited and ran to tell my wife that she saw one. My wife does not believe that me or my daughter saw a meteor that quickly. I swear on my life it happened. When I was a teenager, I almost got run over by Robert Pattinson in my hometown. It's a smaller city between Bruges and Ghent. He was driving a Mercedes, probably on his way from Brussels to the hotel he was staying in. On the coast, I'm 100% sure it was him. He was in Brussels for a premiere for the latest Twilight movie at the time. Only told my dad. Was crossing the border at the Golden Triangle from Thailand into Myanmar. Had a heat stroke due to dehydration and passed out in the middle of the street right after the passport control. Woke up to 5 armed soldiers pointing rifles in my face. Don't speak a word of Thai or any other Asian language. I signaled I need to drink water with my hands and they gave me a Coca-Cola and helped me sit down in a nearby chair. Like watching wild birds at my work. I watched a young magpie steal bread off a raven. The magpie's family then attacked the young magpie, took the bread off and gave it back to the raven. They were bird yelling at the young bird, then called to the young magpie and kinda forced it to the front of the pack to the raven. The adult magpies gently pecked at the young magpie until it sung at the raven. Then the magpies all waddled away and went back to hunting for bugs. I feel like I watched some sort of family magpie discipline to prevent an interspecies bird war. Edit. These are Australian birds, so they are the size of footballs. Magpies are smart and a bit cunty if they don't like you. Once when I was 8, I was climbing out of the bathtub after showering. Since I was wet and shit, my mom wrapped me up in a towel so my hands were wrapped as well. I ended up tripping over the edge of the bathtub and face planted onto the ground, where I just laid there, kinda comatose for a second. So I tried to get up, blood flowing down my face from a cut in my head and my nose. And my bucket of crabs nearby, this was a seaside resort, toppled over and went all over me. And they were like in a blood frenzy or something because they pinched me all over, so I started rolling on the ground. Lovely experience, by the way. My family kinda just stared at me. I bled from my nose for 3 hours after being rescued from the crabs. And got sent to hospital, where my nose actually wasn't broken. My family refuses to acknowledge it ever happened, even though I have a hospital bracelet with that date. Oddest thing ever. Opened the fridge and a edit jar of mustard came falling down. It hit the ground and I already thought, great, now I have to clean all of it up. But I genuinely didn't hear it hitting the ground. When I looked down, there was nothing there. No glass shards. Mustard. Nothing. Looked around for a good 5 minutes questioning my reality. Turns out it kinda repelled of the ground and landed in the wine shelf next to the fridge, like 1.5 feet above the floor, upright, standing. It straight up did a bottle flip off the floor. It dropped a solid 6 feet on hard ground and just bounced. Still questioning the laws of physics to this date. Back in high school a few years ago I had a photography class with my best friend and we went to NYC to take pictures for an assignment. We were walking through Times Square and there's always people trying to hand out flyers or comedy club promos, bus tours, eat. This pretty girl got our attention and she was talking to us about a book. I can't remember the name. Anyway, she's explaining this book to us and suddenly she's like, I have someone who can talk to you about this book in more detail. Como with me. And she grabbed my friend and I by the arm and starts walking us somewhere down like 42 Avenue I if I remember correctly. It ends up being a Scientology church. At the time I had no idea about Scientology and was just curious what the heck was going on. So she walks us through the door and immediately a small group of people approaches us. She tells them we want to join and their eyes light up. One of the leaders, I guess, comes over and the girl basically hands off to him. He leads us down a hallway and says something along the lines of, we have a special movie for you. Quote, so we're brought into a small theater, if you could call it that. Maybe like 20 chairs and a small screen. He says the video lasts about half an hour and leaves closing the door behind him. After 2 seconds my buddy and I finally go WTF and head for the door. Turns out it's locked. We looked around the room for any other door but it was dark. Except for the light from the screen. I really did think we were gonna get gassed. The video was about how each of us all have untapped superpowers and this was more or less an instructional video of how to activate them. It was so absurd. When the video ended they opened the doors and asked us to fill out a contact form. Nope. We beelined it for the door and got out immediately. Headed to Mickletown Comics to catch our breaths and then went about our day. I've told people before and they've been skeptical and dismissive by saying, well, why didn't you just get out immediately, or why didn't you break free from the girl, etc. IDKTBH. In the moment I didn't feel threatened or scared. I wasn't even sure what was happening because it was so sudden and quick. It wasn't until we got in the little theater that we both opened our eyes and went, dude, WTF is going on? So yeah, kidnap might be a strong word, but that was my one and only brush with Scientology. My friend and I once missed the last train home after a gig and wandered around a nearby harbor, killing time until the train started up again. A drunk man, around S0 approximately 30 years older than us at the time, stumbled out of a building and invited us onto his boat. We sat with him drinking rum for a few hours while he regaled us with stories about all the sex parties he'd hosted on this boat. I didn't believe him, but I was warm and had a drink in hand, so I humored him. He eventually pulled a lever near the front which opened a secret door to a sex dungeon filled with all kinds of bondage gear and sex toys. We then added each other on Facebook and my friend and I went to catch our train back to London. Edit. He would tell us about the numerous women that were half his age that would come from all over the country to attend these parties. He would also tell us that he was absolutely, unequivocally not gay, but would totally suck off the other guys in attendance because it was the polite thing to do. A pirate hero. I saw a girl who contracted a rare African parasite shoot crack, causing tiny worms to crawl out of the hole in her arm and from the corners of her eyes. It happened. I'm sure it did. I saw the worms. She held one up and said, "See, I told you. This is what they look like." I threw it on the floor and burned it with a lighter. I wasn't even on drugs because I had a drug test for probation in the morning to convince me it didn't happen, but I'm sure of it. TS, like my own brain is trying